Have you ever wondered, am I playing the trumpet the right way? Or maybe you wondered, how can I make trumpet playing more simple? You're in the right place because today we're answering your questions about trumpet playing and we have a special guest. I feel so privileged to have this person with us. We have somebody that's been with the Count Basie Orchestra for 11 years and featured as a soloist and arranger. This person is the assistant professor of jazz trumpet at the University of Michigan School of Music. He's a composer of several musicals, including Jim Crow's Tears and Hastings Street the Musical. And not to mention, he scores films. Come on, people. We have a great person with us today. He said yes to my invitation because he actually cares to help you just as much as I do. I'm happy to introduce to you right now Mr. Kris Johnson. Kris, welcome to Trumpet Lessons HQ.
Man, thank you so much for having me, man. It's truly an honor and a pleasure.
Thanks, man. So
I've been a big fan of your channel for a while, so this is major for me, man. I love all the things you're doing and the community that you're creating first and foremost.
Thank you very much, and then likewise. I want to introduce you to the people a little bit, more than the introduction that I just said for them. So I want to ask you a couple of icebreaker questions. I want to ask you, first of all, if you weren't a trumpet player, what career path do you think you might have pursued, and why?
That's an interesting. Yeah, you mean like outside of music as a whole, or specifically just trumpet?
For outside of music as a whole, that's a good point.
I was gonna say because I do a lot more than trumpet, that would actually be really easy to answer. So you just asked the tougher question. Honestly, I really love helping people. So I'm convinced that no matter what, I'd be involved in some level of education, for sure. Mentorship, education on some level will always be a part of my life. There's so many educators and people that have helped transform my life and allow me to kind of find myself and find community. So that's major for me to be able to give back in that way. I also am a nerd, like a pretty extreme nerd. So anything involving like computers and tech and creating and learning systems is definitely something important. And last, maybe I'd tie all these together somehow. I've always been interested in visual art and started off actually as a visual artist, and I've always incorporated visual elements in my music because of that. So something in the art still, but definitely helping people and involving technology.
Wow, that's really cool. I like that, man. So I got another question. Regarding joining the Count Basie Orchestra, which parts of your journey do you feel prepares you the most for that role, for your role in that group?
For sure. Yeah. So I was with the Basie Orchestra on and off from 2008 through 2019. And during that time, man, I mean, I learned so much. I wish it had been the case. I thought that it was going to be the case of like, oh yeah, you go to college, you get a master's degree in jazz, and then you can pretty much do anything and you're fully prepared. What I will say is that I learned how to learn and I learned how to adapt and how to learn music and be in a rehearsal situation and be professional. I had enough professional experiences when I was in college where I was aware of what it took to be professional. However, there were so many more things I learned when I actually got on the bandstand, about a lot of it about travel, about the endurance it takes to be on the road, the discipline that it takes, the lack of sleep, the lack of rehearsal, honestly, the amount of time you just have to be ready and prepared. So I'd say the biggest things were just like knowing how to listen, knowing how to play in an ensemble. But then, man, every group that you're in, there's a huge learning curve that you have to go through. But hopefully those universal skills of communication and teamwork still pay off.
Man, you kind of touched on some things that find myself talking about a lot, which is the endurance it takes physically and mentally to perform on the horn. Like we practice our whole life, so it's kind of like that. The trumpet part of it is the easy part. We don't have to think about that. But then just the schedule that just really wears you down. So what are some things that you found to work for you? Because I like to ask people that question. Everybody has their own routine. So not even trumpet routine, just living everyday life. So what are some things you found to work for you to help you perform at a high level when you're traveling, especially?
For sure. I mean, nerves kick in. It's just something that happens from time to time, even now, when I'm on the road. What I find is really helpful is before I go on stage or maybe even sometimes during sound check, I like to get there early enough to get a warm up in the room that I'll be performing in, and then I'll do some grounding exercises. So I do like a box breathing exercise. I'll do a small meditation. I'll do various grounding things to just kind of get acclimated with the space and kind of get out of my head and get into my body. So I find that's helpful. If I'm able to, any city that I'm in when I'm on the road, I love to go on walks. So if I can find a hike to go on, or even just like walk around the city and grab a cup of coffee, listen to some music, um, get up and be active. I think
Yeah.
that's really important. If you can squeeze in a workout, that's even better.
Yeah.
And then just kind of keeping an eye on, yes, going out and hanging with the band is super important. And like, and
Mm-hmm.
I love to do that. And I'm not usually like a going out type person when I'm at home. So I'm on the road, I might indulge a little bit more and go hang out with people, but being aware of sleep is vital and sleep is important. And no matter what, you have to get up the next morning and you have to get on that bus, or you have to get on that train, you have to get on the airplane, making
Yeah.
sure that you're giving yourself time to rest, bringing a book with you, having some really great headphones and listening to music. I find all those things kind of help it, where it's like, this is a special experience that I'm having on the road. I'm able to go
Yeah.
out, maybe hang out with my friends a bit more than I do when I'm at home. I'm able to listen to some music and go on walks and take time for myself. I think all those things are essential. And just remember, you're not a superhero. You do have
Yeah.
to show up and deliver on stage at a high level. You need to rest and you need to allow yourself some time to recover.
Man, that is so key. You're right, man. I find myself telling people just important how sleep is. For me, if possible, whenever possible, as often as possible, I'll take a nap, in the middle of the day, just because that's how important it is. Your chops vibrate totally differently when you're tired. So, um,
Yes. The end of a tour is always different from the beginning of the tour. That end of the tour where you're exhausted, man, and and it's wild because the mouth is going to do whatever the mouth is going to do, and you have to be
yeah.
prepared for it. And and I also meant Advil and ginger. I'll carry some fresh ginger with me, and
Ooh.
I'll peel the ginger off and just make sure I have a piece of it. Try to do things to get the inflammation to go down. Try to consume a bit less dairy. Drink lots of water, a ton of
Mm-hmm.
water. Those things make a huge difference, even just in terms of how the chops resonate.
So I want to back up and talk about this ginger for a minute. What's the role of the ginger? I've been drinking. I've been putting ginger in my blender and drinking that
Yeah,
every morning, and I know it's good for the gut. But what's your reason for using it?
yeah, it's good for the gut. It's also anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
So to
Okay.
me, it helps with like the natural swelling that we run into. It
Okay.
helps clear up congestion.
Yes.
You know, for a while I was dealing with
Yeah.
migraines
Mm-hmm.
that were, because of a sleeping schedule that I was dealing with. And it felt that it helped a lot with that too. So really, it's
Yeah.
the anti-inflammatory piece that's key for me.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah. And
So
then drinking water.
yeah, right on. So I have some questions. I reached out to the people on my email list. So if you're not on the email list, please join it because you get extra help. You get some tips. You get to find out about things first. So I reached out to the email list and I invited them to ask a question. Hey, what are you going through on the horn? What's that main thing that's really giving you trouble right now? What do you need to know? So I got a lot of answers. Some of them are similar. Some of the questions are similar, but I'm going to post them anyway. And I just want to get into the questions for the people, and let's get into it right now. Here's the first one. Yeah, can you see this, by the way?
Yeah,
Oh,
I can see
perfect.
it. Yep.
So this one's from Jeff. He says, I use an app to get in tune. All right. When I play a C, I can see that I'm sharp or flat, but I don't get a nice steady tone. The indicator wiggles as I try to play the C as consistently as possible. So his question is, what can I do to improve my ability to play a consistent pitch? All right, that's Jeff's question. What comes to
Okay.
mind
You
right
want to
away?
tackle this one, or you want me to tackle
Yeah,
it?
well, I want to know what you think. Both of us can chime in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the first thing is, Jeff, know that there's a difference between playing in tune and playing in the center of your pitch on the instrument. Playing in the center of the pitch on the instrument is what's going to give the maximum
That's right.
amount of it's what's going to give the maximum amount of resonance on the instrument. It's going to get you that brassy tone. It's going to get the horn to resonate in a certain way, which gives you the proper tone quality while playing in tune just really has to do with flat or sharp. So I could play a C on trumpet and the sound get like a really resonant sound, but my tuning slide is all the way out, so it doesn't actually sound like our C. As opposed to if I have that tuning slide and it's in the perfect slot, but I play out of center of pitch and I'm playing a little bit flat on the horn, and then it doesn't sound good. So I really want you to think about like two separate things of how do I first get in the center of pitch on the instrument and get that tone quality I want, then pull the tuner out and adjust my tuning slide to make sure that where the center of pitch is on the instrument matches where the center of pitch is for the app. So really putting those two things together. But I think primary is getting the right tone quality. And then when you know you have that right tone quality, adjusting your tuning slide on the proper tuning note to guarantee that you're able to be in that both center of pitch as well as in tune at the same time.
Oh man, that's a great answer. I like to talk about this with people in tune or in resonance, and it's like, do you have to choose? Can you do both? Um,
Right.
I'll add to that. That's a great answer. I'll add to that. So, because I like to talk about things from a physical standpoint as well. So,
Mm,
if things are not stable, right? If the sound's not stable, then there's a good chance that something's moving in your body. So, for us, that could be the wind. Maybe the wind's not steady. I would check that first because that's the foundation of everything we do on the horn. And if the wind is steady, then secondly, I would check your tongue. Is your tongue being still? Some people don't even think about that. Not to mention your entire body. So just the way you stand has got to be, it's got to be a way that supports you playing the horn. So that's why when you watch good players, they take command of the horn with the way that they stand, right? And
mm-hmm.
then you introduce the trumpet to your solid foundation. So check that as well. But yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm so glad we got Kris here to help. This is wonderful. All right, let's go into the next question. This one is from Joe. All right, Joe says, I'm a comeback player. I don't play with any groups yet, but would like to. What's the best way to get up to speed to improve sight reading? Okay. Especially considering complex rhythms and difficult time signatures like cut time. All right, cool. That's a good question, a sight reading question.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a great one.
all right, so I'll go first this time, I suppose. So, in terms of sight reading, man, I learned something way back in high school, and I still use it today. So it's called the STARS method. Everybody does some form of this. So it's an acronym: sharps and flats. You check that first, which is basically your key signature. Then you check your time signature. Then you check your accidentals. Then you check your rhythms, but more specifically, you look for difficult rhythms. So regardless of what music you have in front of you, no matter how easy or complicated it is, identify something to be complicated for that piece, and you just kind of run over that really quick in your mind. Maybe you'll tap it out. Maybe you'll sing it softly to yourself, finger through it, so that when you play it, it's not a surprise. And then you go through the roadmap of the piece. So the last S in stars is for signs. So you're looking for repeat signs. You're looking for da capo. You're looking for first and second endings, codas, things like that. So that's one thing that helps with sight reading. And then I'll say sight read something every day. So that doesn't mean you have to read an entire 3-minute piece every day. But if you keep something fresh before your eyes, maybe 4 measures, and really concentrate on it. Like when I say concentrate, I mean you're counting rhythms, you're tapping it out, you're hearing the melodies in your mind as best as you can, and then you play it, you get better. It's a skill that has to be developed just like everything else. So that's what I'll say about that. I got a story about sight reading, but I'll save it for another time. You want to add anything to that, Kris? Are you good?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that system, and I think it's similar to kind of the approach that I take. I think to add on to that, one thing that I'll do is when I look at a line of music, and I started this in high school as well, is I would separate the rhythmic aspect from the melodic aspect. And I would first, try to just read it from left to right, just attempt, always with the metronome. Put the metronome on and attempt to read it down one time. And then I'll go through with the student and take one measure and just break down the rhythm, do the math to break down the rhythm of exactly what the rhythm is and get comfortable with it. Then go through and play every single note that appears as if it was a quarter note. Turn the metronome on and just no discrimination of note to note and just play every note as if it's a quarter note. So I can really make sure I at least am comfortable reading the notes without rhythm, and then attempt to put the two together for a bar. Then I'll move to bar number two and do the same thing. Break down the rhythm, play every note as if it was a quarter note. So I know the rhythm, I know the notes, put them together. And then at the end of that process, if it's just a 4 bar phrase, then try to go through, do the rhythm for the entire 4 bar passage, do the notes as if they're quarter notes for the entire 4 bar passage, and then put them together. And like you mentioned, you do that every day, you really build a habit of the way in which you're approaching sight reading, and you are a bit more systematic because you're able to really think of what the difference is between understanding the math of the rhythm and then understanding the pitch accuracy and what it takes to play the individual notes. And then when you're reading, you're really putting those two skill sets together.
Yeah, that's solid, man. You bring up a great point too. I like what you said about treating everything like a quarter note. That's awesome. I can see how that really helps too with some of something that might be like atonal or something like that. That's
I
pretty
do that a
solid.
lot with, like, if I'm practicing like a brass solo, with a big
Yeah.
band. I'll have them go through the entire brass solo, and we'll do like quarter note, quarter rest, quarter note, quarter rest for every single note. So it's like, let's just focus on pitches and chords and
Mm-hmm.
balance and not worry about the rhythms, and just, can you play the notes? Then
Mm.
go through and put them in, and then they're able to have a bit more of I think, a deeper relationship with the accuracy.
That's dope. So something else I want to add. You just reminded me hearing your answer. Sometimes you might, because you talked about mathematically figuring things out. Sometimes you might look at a measure, regardless of the time signature, and you might be able to see symmetry. You might be able to see, oh, this is clearly the first half and that's clearly the second half. Sometimes when you look at a rhythm, it can look tricky. So I always like to say, what do you know for sure? When you're looking at that, okay, that's definitely beat one. That's first. I don't know what that is in the middle, but it ends and three and. I know that for sure, right?
Right,
And so
right.
then you might kind of you have you have information now. You can like figure out what you don't know. Well, I'm missing beat two. So this all of that weird looking stuff is in beat two somehow. You know. So that can kind of help too. Man, solid advice. I want to adopt some of these myself. All right. We have a question from Jean. I hope I said your name right. Please forgive me if I messed it up. I think it's Jean. Kris, getting ready for my senior recital in the spring. I'm really doing my best to memorize at least 60% of my repertoire for the show. How do you manage learning longer pieces? What tips and tricks do you have to help memorize uh, with speed and efficiency? All right, that's a good question, John. Uh,
Yeah,
what
that's a really good one.
what do you do for this, Kris?
I think similar to what we talked about with the sight reading, I think there is an element of taking things bar by bar, um, and going through and, like, playing one passage, playing one bar, repeating that bar several times, and then just add one bar, go back to the beginning, and piece them together. And sometimes I'll do it that way, and then sometimes I'll learn it backwards. I'll go through and say, okay, let me just tackle this last bar, and I'm just going to play this last part until it's, really solidified in my mind. And now I'm going to learn, like, if it's like an 8 bar phrase, I'm going to learn bar 7, and then I'm going to tag it on to bar 8. All right, let me go back and learn bar 6, and do
Yeah.
6, 7, 8. So I think either one of those combinations is really helpful, and giving yourself enough time where you're really able to, like, digest the music and have a system to work with it, and then you're able to see them as complete phrases and know
Mm-hmm.
where you're going. I found that really helpful for memorization, and then repetition, as
Yes.
much as possible, and then early on in the process, allowing yourself to attempt to play from memory, and sometimes you might be surprised of how much you're actually retaining,
Yes.
after you've just played through it a few times, and then listening to it constantly also helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that listening part is what I was going to touch on. So, um, you got to listen to the music So if you, first of all, when you're studying your music, I hope you are listening as part of your study. So if you have a recording, keep that in your ears, because that's subliminal programming, right? So that's gonna be something that you can depend on and fall back on in a live performance. If there's not a recording, make one. That's what I do. But mostly you can find a recording, but maybe it's original music. There's not a recording yet. So make a recording and listen to it. Because for me personally, that's how I learn. You're talking about being quick with the memorization. For me, I have to have it in my ears. So I'm listening a lot. So that's the only thing I would add. And then, of course, the process of learning helps to get everything in your subconscious, right? So sometimes people might only play trumpet, but I'm going to recommend play a melody on the piano too. I don't know if you're what style of music you're learning, but to me, it almost doesn't matter. I think a person should spend time on the piano. You don't got to be really good uh, technically at the piano, but play the harmony, sing the melody while you do that. Anything that can get music into your subconscious so you're not so much in your head is going to help you memorize the music. So that's a really good question. Thanks a lot, John. Let's go to, oh, this is one of my favorite questions. I can't wait to hear what you think about this. This is from Lewis. He says, how do I determine my musical age? Is it when I first picked up the trumpet at 10? When I made a comeback, which was 53? Or the level of music that I can play? My biological age is 67. How do I determine my musical age? I love this question. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have so many thoughts about this.
Yeah, you want to go first on this one?
Okay, sure. This is what I consider to be like a mind monster. So, and we've all been there too. So, I get it. Somebody's looking at you. They're kind of like, hey, that guy's, in this case, 67 years old, but you could be 20 years old. It doesn't really matter. Why does he sound like that, whatever that is? So I think we need to have like tunnel vision in a sense and be okay with what our path is. As long as we're working on the horn, we can be happy with that. And then when it's time to perform, we can present to the audience what we have. And the performance is a part of. How can I say this? I say when you practice, that's only a portion of what you're going to get. Performance takes you the rest of the way. So your education is incomplete without performing. So you perform, you get those lessons, and then you go back to the practice room and you work out what you need to work out. And what people think about that, if they're not encouraging, it's okay to let those ideas go. When I was podcasting, I kind of learned this because I was reaching out to Kris Bodie, Wynton Marsalis, people that we look up to. And what I found out was mostly everyone was very generous. Like Kris coming here with us today. People are very generous because they care to help you. I didn't really come across too many people who were rude or cold, but the few people who were like that, I realized that there were so many more people who were more encouraging, and that's where our thoughts should be. So that's what I'm thinking about that. I have more to say about that. One more thing. When your trumpet is so physical, we have to practice more often than we don't. So, if you take a week off of practice, you feel it, right? Let alone 2 weeks. If you get busy with your life, and don't practice for a couple of weeks as a comeback trumpet player, you're gonna feel it. So, if you're taking 20 years off the horn, 30 years off the horn, then I say when you come back at 53, that's day one. So, what is it? What does a person who's been playing for let's say 12 years. A person that's been playing for 12 years, where are they? And we can maybe talk about this, Kris. I know, like, if I started playing trumpet at 8 years old, in 12 years I'll be in college. But even there's a spectrum. Every college player isn't at the same level. You have someone who's really good, who's probably playing at a legendary level, and then you got someone who's not. And it's like a wide spectrum. So even though you might have two people who are 20 years old, there's a big wide gap. So what are we doing judging that? That's not our place to judge. We have to stay on our path and work diligently. So that's what I say about that.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's how old do we feel
Mm-hmm.
at any given moment. But what I often tell my students is, there's such a combination. There are hours put in,
Yeah.
but there's also the resource that we might tap into that's able to make us jumpstart. And there's also, like, our healing journey and our where we are mentally and how free we are emotionally at that time to be able to make our practice more efficient. um, to me, I can have one student who can make strides through a certain thing in a month, and it might
Right.
take another student 2 years to do that. And honestly, it doesn't matter. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, the most important thing is that they're practicing, they're moving forward, their unique challenges are something that they're addressing on a daily basis. So my biggest piece of advice would be to just keep going
Mm-hmm.
and not worry about that and enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
um, there are some days where, like, sometimes where I'm really busy with a composing project or I need to go out of town.
Yeah.
I might take a week off from trumpet and then feel like I'm starting at day one, more or less a few years. It's something
Yeah.
that requires so much maintenance, but I try not to worry about that. I pick up the horn, and every day I have to reassess, where am I on trumpet today?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it starts with that pedal C. I'm gonna start with the pedal C. If I can get
Mm.
the pedal C out, okay, I at least know I got that pedal C. That opens up the avenue to this. All right, on the low end, I got the pedal C. Then I'm going through my lip slurs and testing. Okay, great. All right, today I might have like my C. I don't have my D available. No problem. That's what I'm going to work within this range. And then tomorrow, do I have the pedal C available? The E might be available. The next day, the G might be available. It
Yeah.
depends. I think it's more about what is my routine, and let me show up and do the routine. Kind of like if you're, doing like a weight loss journey and you're trying to weigh yourself every single day or multiple times a day, that's going to fluctuate so much. It's more about how do I feel, or where's the scale a month from now, than it is like that day to day. And am I showing up and eating my salads and going on my walks and doing the things I know I'm supposed to do? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing those things, I can trust the process and just be in it and enjoy the ride. I think that's the most
Mm.
essential thing.
That's solid, man. You hit on two things: the routine. That's good. And then the other thing I took away from what you were saying, it triggered a memory, which I love about playing trumpet. It's really about us getting better each day. So I see
Right.
that practicing trumpet as a tool is something that we can use to help refine our character. Believe it or not, that's how I look at it. Because I,
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes a special type of person. If you're practicing trumpet, if you're submitting questions to this platform, then I think you're on this level that I'm speaking about, which is wonderful. Um, if you're practicing trumpet, if you open up your awareness and you're willing to sit down with something that you know you're not good at today, but you're willing to put the work in, that's going to help you become a better person. The act of sitting down to work that out. So that's the thing to focus on more, I think. Um,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah. So anyway, that's a wonderful question. Hey, I want to take a pause right now. I want to tell everybody about Kris. Kris has something called Office Hours with Kris, and it's really simple. You can go to officeHoursWithKrisJohnson.com. Did I say that right, Kris?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
All right. So tell us really quick, what's there on the site officeHoursWithKrisJohnson.com. What's there for the trumpet player watching?
Right. So really, the resource has been developed as something that anyone can gain from. Trumpet players, keyboardists, vocalists, etc. Pretty much any instrument. And the idea is I wanted to create a resource for some universal concepts of learning, and really dig into the things that tackle the most commonly asked questions that I get. And so there's a couple of products I'll tell you about. One of them is called 48 Patterns of Fourths or Fifths. I've long been obsessed with playing fourths and fifths patterns. Um, and I found that they really open me up in terms of just technically on the horn, having as much access to technique on the horn because they really challenge things, but also too, it opens up your ear to really be able to clearly hear fourths and fifths, which we know are so much of music moves in those directions. And then it also kind of provides us with a vocabulary that is kind of based in some, kind of more 12 tone type techniques. So that's been really helpful and been a top seller. Another one gets more into 12 tone, and it's a compilation of 12 tone rows. And the idea is that I took some symmetrical 12 tone rows that I've worked with in my practice and broken them down. I'm very particular in the resources that I provide, where it gives you a breakdown of what the concept is, and then it shows that particular exercise written in all 12 keys in various ranges. So for both of those books, that's present.
Oh man.
Another one is entitled Progressions You Should Know. This one's pretty unique because it started off as a video series where I break down about 25 different chord progressions that are really commonly found in music. But I do a deep dive into each one in the video series, and I also created an ebook that does the same thing. The idea is that if we're studying this progression, I want you to be able to understand the analysis of the progression. Like, for example, if it's a 1-5-1, I want you to be able to see what that looks like in terms of what do their arpeggiated scales, chords look like, what commonly used scales are played over them, what does a two-note voice leading or four-note voice leading look like, and then provide you some context of here are some commonly used songs that utilize this progression so you can understand the way it looks in real time. I find that this is really helpful because as we're learning a song, we're able to recognize certain patterns and make correlations with those in terms of the way that we've practiced. Like, oh, this is that 1-6-2-5-1 progression. I learned about that in Progressions You Should Know, and this is very similar to this song and this song. And we're able to kind of like bridge the gap in terms of our understanding.
Oh man, that's
Um,
solid, man. So you're teaching concepts that can be applied throughout all of music, pretty much. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
yeah.
the idea. Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. Upcoming, right now I'm working on my first arranging course. That's going to be both an arranging course as well as an ebook. It'll be a combination of a video series and an ebook. And I just want to take the information that lives in my head that I've taught in classes so much and I teach to
Yeah.
students, and just in a very streamlined and practical way show you some of the tips that I use on a day-to-day basis for music creating, as opposed to
Mm.
always starting at the very, very beginning. This is stuff that I actually actively practice and actively show my students that kind of help really jumpstart that growth.
Oh, I love it, man. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put office hours with Kris Johnson in the comments section below to make it easy for you, the listener, the viewer, and check that stuff out if you're interested. I know I'm going to. There's some things I want to get into myself. Hey, man, would you mind if I got into that and started teaching from it? Is that okay?
Man, absolutely. That's what it's there for. Please. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, let's continue with a couple more questions. We got a question here from Walter. He says, when you have a gig, a show, a concert coming up, and you're working on new music, how do you manage your time between your daily fundamental routine and working on your new music? I find that I don't have enough chops left to really work on new music after finishing my fundamental routine. Oh, yeah, great question. What comes to mind
Yeah.
straight away, Kris?
For me, I think I want to make sure that I have a routine that is sustainable, that I can do every day, regardless of if I have a gig, if I have a rehearsal, if there's specific stuff I need to practice on. So I want to make sure that that is a reasonable routine that I can get through every day and still be able to function musically. That's the way that my life is set up. So much of my practice is geared towards I have a gig the next day or I have something I have to do. So I'm making sure that I maintain that daily routine, but then there are things that I need to work on. So to me, if I have that separation, I kind of think of them as being like block scheduling, where in one sense it's great. I'm going to take the first, 20 to 30 minutes and do my entire, warm up routine, drink some water, take a break. And then when I come back, I'm working on either the music for a concert, like you mentioned, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to play the gig, whatever it might be. My chops are used to here is the established warm up and routine. Here is the next thing, the practice or the gig or whatever it might be. So I would challenge you to adjust your routine so that you're able to have that steady routine that you do, and then it leaves room for you to practice. That could be your extra time with the horn in your face is to work on other music. If you don't have any active music that you're working on and preparing, then another approach to that could easily be, I'm going to add on more stuff to my routine for this particular day just to get the horn on my face more.
I like that. So tell me what you think about what I'm about to share. So I'm similar to Kris, but there are some differences. So I have a routine, and quite honestly, it takes a long time. So, but when the concerts come up, you know what doesn't change is the first part of my routine. So that never changes. And what I'm for me personally, I need to get those flexibility studies in. But with that is the tonguing, and you work out everything. That's a good routine has everything in it. Um, but I find myself kind of like dropping off the latter part. But it's kind of made that way. It's kind of made that way. I don't know what a good example would be, but I thought about the old Batmobile from the Adam West Batman, because he had that attachment with Robin would ride, but then they like break off and they do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's how I look at my personal routine. But there is a part that does not change, and that has to
Right.
happen. Otherwise, you can't really perform at a high level. Um,
I think that's
yeah,
so essential. I think about like when we watch, a basketball game, we still see them. They're going
yeah.
out, they're doing their stretches, they're doing their laps, they're warming up. I don't watch a lot of basketball. It's probably showing,
No, you're right.
but they're
Yeah,
shooting their free throws.
yeah,
They have the consistent things they're doing. These are like the most top notch athletes in the
yeah,
world, but
yeah.
they do those things every single time before the game, and no one is sitting out. Kobe wasn't
Right.
sitting that part out. And if you listen to him, you listen to interviews with Kobe. I'm more interested in who Kobe was as a person than I am like basketball. But he
Mm-hmm.
would talk about his discipline
Yeah.
in the weight room, doing those things. Now, does that mean that he was lifting weights on the day of a game? Likely not. Or maybe he was. Either way, he had his consistent routine that he did,
Mm-hmm.
and then he would go out and kill the performance. My thing is, if I've played the music enough consistently, or I've done my warm up and I've played the music that I need to play, the day of the show is just another day.
That's right.
My chops and my body are used to, I'm going to show up efficiently, I'm going to play the thing. Sometimes what I'll do if it's a really challenging piece, I'm warming up and then I'm playing that piece 2 or 3 times a day. So by the time I
Mm.
go in to do one performance, my body's used to the endurance to play it multiple times, not just one time.
Great
And
tip.
replace that piece with whatever practice thing that I'm doing. Ideally, the number of hours that we're putting in, if we have the time on a day to day basis, exceeds the amount of hours we have to spend on stage. It gets dangerous when we're not able to do that because our chops aren't used to having the horn on the face for an hour.
Right.
That's why that daily practice is so important. And it gets away from us sometimes, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good tips. I have more to say. I love this subject, but we're gonna get some more questions in. All right. This is from David. How important do you think breathing exercises are for developing trumpet playing? I've been reading quite a bit about different breathing exercises and found this article. Okay, let me look this up
Man, what
again.
about you? How does breathing exercise play into your routine?
So for me, breathing is I have to do it because when I don't, what I know, because I definitely don't like doing them, just like most people. Um, and what I've learned is when I don't do them, I'm okay at first, but then it like adds up. And so I found that my posture changes when I don't do my breathing exercises. So I go from, standing up and open to kind of caving in, and then the sound changes. The sound becomes a little more thin. I don't know if other people noticed it, but I definitely do. And it's harder to play the horn. It's harder to play the horn, especially on the higher side, and I miss more notes. So that's that's what happens when I don't do my breathing exercises. Um, yeah, and then I also like the benefit of doing them because it just makes the playing the horn easier. So I look at breathing exercises like leg day at the gym because I hate doing squats. I hate doing lunges. Like it's not fun. It burns. But it tones the body up kind of quick. So that's how I look at breathing exercises. I need to do them, and when I don't, I pay the price. So I settle on doing them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Settle on doing breathing exercises.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I don't like the results of
it's
not doing them.
right, right. What I like is I think the hack that I found for myself is that as a part of like, kind of somatic therapy work, doing box breathing, like I mentioned earlier, has become pretty essential for me. Or just so in general, I'll just take breaks to just breathe and do 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold. It's a regular part of just like,
Hmm.
to me, deep breathing is just life. So if I'm
Right.
feeling tired, if I'm feeling stressed, I'll just do deep breathing. And so
Hmm.
actually, I find that I practice it more outside of the context of playing trumpet than I do. I think one
Yes.
of the reasons why I enjoy playing trumpet so much is that air moving in and out is actually very cathartic. So
Hmm.
yeah, to me, breathing is life. So I think in general, we need to practice bringing in as much oxygen as possible
Yeah.
and making sure we have that healthy system moving forward and checking those shallow breaths.
Man, you bring up a very good point. That breathing is life. So that's exactly right. Obviously, we're dead if we don't breathe, but incorporating it in your regular daily life. So at first, when this breathing was introduced to me by one of my teachers in particular, I'm thinking about, I asked him, like, can I just do this outside when I'm walking? He's like, yeah, of course. That's like what it's for. I'm like, oh, because before I was just standing in my practice room doing it, and it felt like more of a chore. But now, something that I do every single day is I walk my children to school. I do that every day. So that's when I do my breathing exercises when I'm walking home by myself, and that's a good way to make sure you do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks for your question, David. Let's keep going. Actually, we're going to do one more for time.
Man, that
Oh
time
man,
flew by, didn't it?
yeah, man. I got a question here from Rachel. I'm a returning trumpet player after having too long of a break. At what point do I try joining a band or a group? Do I do it early on while I'm settling, while I'm still getting my trumpet muscles back, or do I wait until I've got some more trumpet lip muscle stamina? That's the question. Um, I think you shouldn't wait, Rachel. I think you should just go in. Um, there's one. Did she say how long she's been playing? Uh, she doesn't say.
Mm-mm.
She just says she's been returning. Okay, so I would say if you've been playing for like 6 to 12 months, then get in a group because there's some lessons from playing in the group that's going to help you improve faster than if you're not in a group. All right, so you get to apply what you're practicing, and that's a great way to grow. So I say don't wait. And Rachel's a returning trumpet player. I have an invitation for all my returning trumpet players. Really, this invitation's for everybody. I have the complete trumpet player challenge that's coming up. It's actually coming up very soon. It's on Monday, November 18th at 6 p.m. Central. And if you have any trouble with your range, endurance, your sound, your reading, all of those common trumpet playing problems, you're going to want to come to this challenge. It's 5 days of powerful and encouraging trumpet lessons. And each day, you're going to leave with a challenge so that you can apply what you learned in the challenge and so that you can conquer your goals. So come to that. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Click the link and register to save your seat. I've done this a few times and people like it. So I think you'll like it too if you come. That's my answer for Rachel. And since we're kind of short on time, we'll do one more. Thanks a lot for meeting us today, Kris.
Oh man, it's my pleasure. That was a great answer too.
Let's go to well, how do I say my guy's name? I'm just gonna call you Io. Io. Io says I already know how to play the basics, but I am yet to understand some riddlements. I think he might mean fundamentals because of too much content online without a streamlined lesson for me to
Mm-mm.
work and grow from beginner to pro. Okay, there's an implied question in there.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I do? I get questions like this a lot in my DMs, and honestly, Chris, man, I usually send them to your page.
Oh wow, thank
Uh,
you.
a lot of times, I'm like, in terms of trumpet playing stuff, because I tend to focus on a lot of theory and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, like find someone who has like a streamlined approach that has like detailed videos and take things one lesson at a time. But IO, you know, one of the best things you can do is if you can find a consistent teacher, they can take those resources and help you take those resources and walk you through them. All these online resources are great, but you can't substitute Arbenz, you can't substitute Clark, you can't substitute these fundamental things. All these concepts are individual concepts. I want you to think of them as being deep dives when you're in the middle of studying. If I'm already in the middle of studying and I'm like, man, there's this one aspect, I need a little more help with pedal tones that came up in my lessons, then I'm checking out the YouTube videos. But you're right, it is harder to put together an actual education for yourself just pulling from social media. What I find is that find a helpful YouTube page, but then when there are those offerings like this, 5 days of intensive trumpet, I don't remember the exact title, but what Kris is talking about, that's really exciting, because then you're able to take these materials and get something that is designed to be sequential in nature. Because a lot of these one-off videos will assist you, but take advantage of the ones that are streamlined and then dive into those. And so, I'd say sign up for that class. If you see this in time, it starts on Monday. You should definitely dive into that. That'll help you a lot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks, Kris. Yeah, come to the Complete Trumpet Player Challenge. IO, I'll be glad to meet you there. Kris, I want to say thanks for coming today, man. It's been wonderful having you on the channel, and thanks for sharing your time.
It's been my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me.
And that's all the time we have today. We have so many more questions that we didn't get to, so I guess we have to do this again. I want to say thanks one more time to Kris Johnson for taking time to share with us. Now, until we get to make the next video, go ahead and click or tap on this video so you can continue your learning. See you there.